You notice it on an ordinary morning. The grocery bag feels heavier, the low chair feels deeper, and you pause before carrying both upstairs. Nothing dramatic has happened. You can still manage the day, but more tasks now require planning, support, or a little recovery afterward. That quiet change matters because independence is rarely lost in one moment. More often, the body's safety margin becomes smaller long before help is absolutely necessary. A minor illness or one missed meal then has a much larger effect than it once did. I would define that margin as the difference between what your day demands and what your body can reliably supply. A staircase demands leg power, balance, vision, and enough cardiovascular reserve to recover. Shopping adds walking distance, decisions, carrying, and divided attention. When reserve is generous, one weak link can be covered by the others. When reserve narrows, a poor night, minor illness, or unfamiliar floor can expose the whole system. The task did not suddenly become harder. The spare capacity protecting you became smaller. This is why the earliest warning is not always pain. It may be a new workaround that makes a normal task possible without fixing the capacity underneath it. Using a railing, cane, glasses, or hearing aid is not failure. Good tools protect independence. The signal is whether your unaided capacity is quietly shrinking behind them. The World Health Organization describes healthy aging through several capacities: movement, vitality, cognition, psychological function, vision, and hearing. Daily independence depends on how they cooperate. That cooperation gives us 7 useful signs. None can predict your future alone, and each can have causes that deserve proper assessment. But a trend across several signs tells you more than a birthday ever could, because chronological age does not measure functional reserve. The important comparison is not you against another person. It is your current ordinary day against your own ordinary day 6 months ago. A stable limitation and a steadily worsening limitation may look similar today, but point toward very different trajectories. Before the first sign, notice the pattern we are looking for: tasks becoming slower, less automatic, more avoided, or more dependent on recovery. One difficult day is noise. A repeated change is information, especially when it alters where you go or what you're willing to do. The first useful distinction is therefore capacity versus compensation. Compensation helps today. Capacity determines how many choices remain tomorrow. That distinction will make every sign clearer, because the goal is not to reject help. It is to notice what the help may be hiding. If explanations like this help you understand your body, subscribe to Feynman's Body Code and tell me your age and country in the comments. Also tell me which ordinary ability you most want to protect: stairs, shopping, driving, cooking, travel, or simply getting up without assistance. The first sign is that rising from a chair has become a sequence instead of one smooth movement. You move to the edge, place both hands, rock forward, hold your breath, and search for enough momentum to stand. Those strategies are intelligent compensations, but together they can reveal a loss of lower body power. Power is force delivered quickly enough to complete a real task. It often fades sooner than people notice, because ordinary life allows the hands and momentum to conceal it. Strength tells you whether the legs can produce force. Power tells you whether they can produce it before balance and gravity change the problem. The chair rise begins at the hips and knees, but the ankles, trunk, and brain must coordinate the movement within a narrow window. If the thighs produce force slowly, the body often rocks farther forward to move its center of mass over the feet. If balance feels uncertain, the hands stay involved longer because they widen the base of support and reduce the demand on the legs. What matters is change. Using your hands after surgery is different from needing them more each month without understanding why. A softer sofa can expose this earlier than a firm dining chair because the hips begin lower and the cushion absorbs some of your momentum. The same loss appears when you hesitate at a toilet, struggle out of a car, or avoid sitting where no armrests are available. These are not 3 separate problems. They are 3 versions of the same demand, lifting your body from a low base with control. A simple observation is whether the movement is becoming smoother or more complicated. Count the extra steps before you count repetitions. Do not turn this into a contest or attempt a hands-free test beside an unstable chair. Use a firm seat and keep support within reach. If rising has clearly worsened, a clinician or physical therapist can help separate weakness from pain, joint limitation, nerve problems, blood pressure changes, or medication effects. That matters because the visible workaround is similar even when the underlying cause is not. The second sign appears after you are already standing. Your normal walking speed and walking radius begin to shrink. You may still describe yourself as able to walk, yet the mailbox feels farther away and crossing a street requires more calculation. Walking speed is useful because it compresses many systems into one observable behavior. Heart, lungs, vessels, muscles, joints, balance, vision, and attention. That is why clinicians sometimes treat usual gait speed as a broad functional signal rather than merely a measure of leg strength. No single slow walk proves decline. Weather, pain, poor sleep, and unfamiliar surroundings can all change pace temporarily. The stronger signal is a persistent change on a familiar route under familiar conditions. Your own hallway can become a small laboratory. Notice whether the steps have shortened, the feet spend longer on the floor, or turning now requires several cautious corrections. A shorter step can be a reasonable response to pain or instability, but it also reduces the momentum and efficiency that make walking feel automatic. Then distance begins to disappear from the day. You park closer, skip an aisle, choose delivery, or stop visiting places without nearby seating. That behavioral change is easy to miss because modern convenience hides it beautifully. The body loses distance while the schedule still looks full. I think this is one of the most important signs. Not whether you can walk once, but whether walking still gives you access to your world. Capacity becomes meaningful when it reaches the mailbox, the garden, the shop, and the people you choose to see. Breathlessness, leg pain, dizziness, or unusual fatigue during walking should not be dismissed as poor motivation. Each points toward a different question. A sudden change deserves prompt attention. A gradual change also deserves attention when it keeps reducing distance month after month. The third sign is that balance problems begin changing your behavior before an actual fall occurs. You touch walls in the hallway, keep a hand on furniture, avoid turning quickly, or switch on every light before moving at night. This behavior is sometimes called furniture surfing. The phrase sounds harmless, but it can reveal that the body no longer trusts its internal map. Balance is not one organ. The eyes report the environment, the inner ears report head motion, the feet report pressure, and the brain combines the signals. Muscles then make rapid corrections at the ankles and hips. The entire loop must detect an error and respond before the body moves beyond recovery. Balance therefore depends on both accurate information and enough muscular speed to act on it. Dim light removes visual detail. A soft rug changes foot information. Turning moves the head. Carrying a bag occupies one hand and shifts weight. That is why balance may look fine in a quiet clinic, yet fail in a dark bathroom or crowded shop. Real life stacks demands. Near falls matter even when you catch yourself. They show that the correction system reached its limit and required luck, furniture, or another person. Fear matters too. After one frightening wobble, people often reduce movement, which weakens the very legs and reactions needed to prevent the next one. The loop is not fear versus courage. It is less practice producing less capacity, which makes fear increasingly reasonable. Small changes in vision and hearing, certain medicines, foot or nerve problems, postural blood pressure drops, and muscle loss can all raise fall risk. So repeated unsteadiness deserves a review, not a lecture about confidence. The system has several adjustable parts. The fourth sign moves from the legs to the hands. Objects that once felt ordinary begin requiring both hands, special tools, or avoidance. A jar stays closed. A key becomes awkward. Buttons take longer. A pan feels unsafe. And grocery bags are divided into smaller loads. Grip strength is not a magical diagnosis, but it is a useful window into overall reserve, because the hands depend on muscles, nerves, joints, sensation, and coordination. It also determines whether a railing, cane, package, or kitchen tool can actually be used safely. The hand also reveals whether strength can be transferred into useful action. A strong arm is less helpful if the fingers cannot position and secure an object. Dexterity adds another layer. Coins, medication caps, phone buttons, and fasteners require sensation and precise timing, not merely squeezing force. When these tasks become frustrating, people quietly stop cooking certain meals, wearing certain clothes, or carrying objects between rooms. That is how a hand problem can become a nutrition problem, a medication problem, or a mobility problem without announcing itself as any of them. Pain may come from arthritis or tendon problems. Numbness may involve nerves. Sudden one-sided weakness raises a very different concern. The pattern matters. Gradual bilateral weakening is not the same as a sudden change in one hand, and neither should be explained by age alone. Watch the compensations. Are you choosing lighter containers, leaving lids loose, avoiding stairs because the railing feels less secure, or asking others to carry everything? Tools are sensible, but the growing number of tools can reveal that hand capacity is changing underneath them. The fifth sign is that ordinary tasks consume a disproportionate amount of energy and recovery. The warning is not simply feeling tired, it is paying such a high biological price for one task that the rest of the day must be reorganized around it. A shower leaves you seated for 20 minutes. Making breakfast feels like work. Changing sheets becomes the main event of the day. This is not the same as disliking chores. The question is whether a familiar task now uses so much reserve that another planned activity must be canceled. Vitality is the body's ability to generate, deliver, and restore usable energy. It involves food, muscle, oxygen transport, sleep, hormones, and disease burden. Unlike motivation, this reserve has physical inputs that can be assessed instead of judged. When reserve is high, the body pays for a task and recovers quickly. When reserve is low, the same task creates a debt that lasts for hours. That debt can come from deconditioning, but it can also reflect anemia, heart or lung problems, infection, thyroid changes, poor sleep, depression, medication effects, or inadequate nutrition. This is why telling someone to push harder can be careless. First, identify whether the limitation is training, fuel, recovery, or an untreated medical problem. Unintentional weight loss belongs in this section because the scale can fall while muscle, appetite, and reserve are disappearing together. A smaller body is not automatically a stronger or more independent body. After later life, preserving useful tissue can matter more than chasing a lower number. Pay attention when meals become consistently smaller, clothing loosens without intention, or fatigue begins changing what you prepare and eat. The sixth sign is not forgetting a name. It is losing reliability in the multi-step tasks that organize an independent life. Bills are paid twice or not at all. Medications become uncertain, appointments are missed, and familiar recipes lose their sequence. These tasks rely on executive function, holding a goal in mind, arranging steps, resisting distraction, checking errors, and switching when circumstances change. A person may remember every ingredient, yet still lose track of which step comes next when the telephone rings. Memory is part of the system, but independence often depends just as much on planning and judgment. You must remember the medicine and take the correct one at the correct time. Hearing and vision can imitate cognitive trouble. A person who misses instructions or cannot read a label may appear forgetful when the information never arrived clearly. Poor sleep, depression, pain, infection, medication changes, and metabolic problems can also affect attention and thinking. Some causes are treatable. The useful signal is a change from your own baseline, especially when another person notices errors you cannot easily reconstruct. Occasional mistakes are human. Repeated errors in money, medicine, navigation, cooking safety, or appointments deserve a proper conversation with a clinician. Do not wait for a crisis simply because the person can still hold a pleasant conversation. Social fluency and task reliability are not identical. A calm review of hearing, vision, medicines, mood, sleep, and cognition can protect autonomy by finding the weakest link early. The seventh sign is the most easily rationalized. Your world becomes smaller even though no one has formally told you to stop. The calendar may remain busy with calls and deliveries while direct participation quietly disappears. You stop driving at night, then stop driving unfamiliar routes, then avoid the shop at busy hours, and eventually wait for someone else to go. Some adaptation is wise. Night vision changes, traffic becomes demanding, and asking for help can prevent harm. The question is whether choices are multiplying or disappearing. A shrinking life radius can begin with legs. Balance, bladder urgency, hearing, vision, confidence, fatigue, pain, or cognition. The final behavior may look identical. Fewer outings. The hidden cause determines whether the right response is exercise, treatment, equipment, transport, or social support. This sign matters because participation itself trains capacity. Leaving home asks the body to walk, turn, decide, communicate, adapt, and recover. When outings disappear, the body loses practice and the brain loses confidence. Isolation can then worsen mood, activity, appetite, and sleep. The home can slowly become both refuge and boundary. That transition often happens through reasonable decisions made one at a time. I would not measure independence by how rarely you accept help. I would measure it by how many meaningful choices remain available to you. That is why the seventh sign ties the others together. Chair power, walking distance, balance, hands, energy, and planning all determine the size of your world. Now place all 7 signs on one board, not as a score of age, but as a map of reserve. 1. Rising requires more steps and more hand support. 2. Familiar walking becomes slower and shorter. 3. Walls and furniture become part of your balance strategy. 4. Hands lose useful strength or precision. 5. Ordinary tasks create an energy debt. 6. Multi-step responsibilities become less reliable. 7. Your life radius contracts. The meaning is strongest when several gauges change together over time. One weak hand may be local, a weak hand combined with slower walking, exhaustion, and repeated errors suggests a broader loss of reserve. This is not a home diagnosis. It is a way to notice function early enough to ask better questions. The next step is not to attack all 7 systems at once. First, separate sudden change from gradual change. Sudden facial droop, one-sided weakness, new confusion, fainting, chest pressure, severe breathlessness, or sudden vision loss requires urgent medical attention. A fall with injury, inability to bear weight, or a rapid loss of function also belongs outside a self-training experiment. Gradual change deserves a calmer, but still deliberate approach. Document the pattern, review health and medicines, and assess the relevant capacity. A 7-day independence audit can make the pattern visible without turning your home into a laboratory. On day 1, notice one chair you use often. Record whether you need hands, rocking, breath holding, or several attempts. On day 2, use a familiar safe route. Notice pace, stops, breath, pain, and whether the distance has changed from your usual pattern. On day 3, observe turning and balance near sturdy support. Do not close your eyes or create a fall challenge to prove anything. On day 4, notice hands during real tasks, a lid, key, button, pan, bag, or railing. Look for change, asymmetry, pain, and numbness. On day 5, choose one familiar household task and record how long recovery takes before you feel ready for the next activity. On day 6, review one multi-step responsibility such as medicines, a recipe, appointments, or a bill. Ideally with a trusted person if concerns already exist. On day 7, draw your real weekly map. Which places did you choose, which did you avoid, and what specific barrier made the decision? The purpose is not to produce a frightening total. It is to find the first bottleneck, because the first bottleneck often determines the whole day. If chair power is the bottleneck, progressive strength and task practice may help. If dizziness is the bottleneck, more squats are not the first answer. If hearing is the bottleneck, a hearing assessment may restore conversation and confidence more effectively than another balance drill. If medicines are contributing to unsteadiness or fatigue, a professional review can change the problem without blaming your character. This is the central lesson. Protect independence by identifying the limiting system, not by applying the same solution to every sign. Generic advice fails when it treats dizziness, weakness, poor vision, pain, and medication effects as though they were one problem. The body is trainable, but training works best when the target is real. Strength work cannot correct an unreadable medicine label. New glasses cannot rebuild leg power. A cane can improve safety, but it does not replace every reason to preserve strength and balance. Good aging is therefore not a war against assistance. It is intelligent cooperation between capacity, environment, tools, and medical care. Small environmental changes can preserve function immediately. Better lighting, secure rugs, railings, reachable storage, and supportive shoes. But the environment should support activity where possible, not quietly remove every reason for the body to move, reach, carry, and decide. Capacity also responds to repetition. Chair practice, walking, strength, balance work, adequate nutrition, sleep, and social participation can protect different parts of reserve. The combination matters because independence is a network outcome, not the property of one muscle or one organ. The correct dose depends on health, symptoms, and starting ability. A repeatable challenge is more useful than one heroic day followed by avoidance. Track function in ordinary language. Easier, steadier, farther, less assistance, shorter recovery, fewer errors, and more choices. Those changes are meaningful because they return directly to daily life. A stronger leg matters when the chair becomes ordinary again. Better balance matters when you can turn in the kitchen without reaching for the counter. Better hearing matters when conversation stops feeling like work. Improved endurance matters when a shower no longer cancels the afternoon. Better organization matters when medicines and appointments become reliable again. The end point is not a perfect test score. It is a life with enough reserve to absorb an imperfect day. Return to that grocery bag and low chair from the morning. They were not enemies. They were instruments revealing where the margin had narrowed. Perhaps the bag needs 2 trips today, and that is sensible. But now you know to ask whether carrying capacity is stable, recovering, or declining. Perhaps the chair needs hand support today. The useful question is whether the support is temporary, unchanged, or growing month by month. Independence is not the absence of help. It is the preservation of agency, options, and enough capacity to participate in your own decisions. The 7 signs are valuable because they appear in real life before a medical chart can describe the whole pattern. Notice them without panic, measure them without ego, and investigate them before compensation becomes your only strategy. Your birthday tells you how long you have lived. Your functional reserve tells you how much of the day still belongs to you.